Sure.
Hi everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Mr. Ranjit Pratap Singh, co-founder and CEO at Pratilipi. Ranjit is a graduate of FMS Delhi and has worked for companies such as Vodafone before starting his own venture in 2015. Hi Ranjit, welcome to ELI.
Thanks, Priya. It's a pleasure to be here.
Ranjit, I'd request you to introduce yourself to our audience.
So I'm Ranjit. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of Pratilipi. Pratilipi is an Indian language storytelling platform where people basically come and either create or consume these stories. So it could be in text, which is our flagship product called Pratilipi, but it could also be audio in form of Pratilipi FM, comics in form of Pratilipi Comics, and now podcast in form of IVM Podcast as well.
Okay. Tell us more about what kind of reach we have, how many people we reach every day, and what is the kind of impact we have been making.
Sure. So let me talk differently about different products. So for Pratilipi's core product, which is about online literature, we have about 20 million to 25 million monthly active users and about 300,000 writers now. So these writers have published more than 3 million stories on the platform. For Pratilipi FM, we have about 200,000 monthly active users and a little more than 5,000 hours of content is there in 8 languages. Comics we have recently launched in Hindi, and that has about 500,000 monthly active users. So it's currently only in Hindi, but we'll kind of expand into other languages starting from beginning of next year. IVM Podcast is a company that we have recently acquired. So it's one of the largest and the oldest Indian podcasting companies with about 2 million listens a month. And we are like hoping that all of these 4 products will kind of grow to much more than this in the coming year.
Okay. So Ranjit, I'll first talk about a few of the basic questions about the kind of industry you're operating in. So one key offering you have is vernacular content. So my question around that, why is that we have been seeing a lot of technology platforms like Facebook, Google, etc. Although they have they do offer language support for different Indian languages, but why is that English is prevalent in all the technology platforms, even the smartphones, TVs, etc. What is the reason behind that?
So my understanding is that, like, if you look at India specifically, then the number of people who kind of started coming on to internet were people who were comfortable with English. So which also meant that it was easier to target these people. Specifically, if you look at like all the global products, and these were already in English because they're in their home markets, people are comfortable with English. And then when people saw that the top 50 million people or the first 50 million people who are coming onto internet and using these products, they also are comfortable with English. So they never had to kind of expand their offerings. It's only now in last 3, 4, 5 years when the number of people who are using internet kind of started growing exponentially. Then people realize that, okay, in India, 90% of users don't really understand English. So that is how products had to be localized, new products had to be launched. The UX had to be kind of thought through from first principles. And like this Indian language users or Bharat users, as some people call it, started coming on board. So I think it's just a matter of timing, and that's probably just it. That people have to focus, and people are focusing only on people who spoke English because those were the majority of people who were on the internet. And now that that's not true, so people are focusing on Indian languages as
well. Okay. So now we will talk about your journey as an entrepreneur. So why don't you start from your day one? I believe you worked for Vodafone after completing your graduation studies. So I'd like to understand why you quit your full-time job and get into uncertainties.
So actually, when I quit my job, my plan was not to build a startup. My plan was to join an early stage startup and kind of work there for a couple of years. So there are a couple of reasons of why I quit, but the number one reason was that my job kind of had become fairly straightforward, and I was doing very well. So when I joined, for example, like my territory used to be either the worst or the second worst territory for like 15 years. When I quit, we were the number one territory in 3 out of the last 4 months, and number two territory in the remaining 1 month. And I thought when you're very, very young, when you're like 24, 25, you don't want to be in a comfortable situation. You want to kind of be in a situation where you're finding it hard and challenging so that you are learning and growing at a faster pace. And this is why I thought that, instead of a large corporate which moves a little bit slowly, why don't like go and join a startup which is going to move faster and I am going to be kind of learning a lot more. So I was meeting a lot of founders and trying to decide which startup to work for. But around the same time, like this has been a problem of like lack of Indian language content, like you were talking about earlier, with a lot of my friends. And these friends basically said that, nobody else is solving this, so why don't you give it a shot? And that's how essentially I decided to kind of start with Lipi.
Okay, when you started on the first day, what all things you did? How did you find your co-founders, and how did you start solving the things?
The first thing we did was essentially actually try and figure out if this is a problem worth solving at all. So I knew that I have this problem, but like just because one person has this problem doesn't mean that it can become a company. So the first thing that I did was try and talk to a lot of writers and a lot of readers to try and understand whether this is a problem for a lot of people or only for a few people. And number two, to more intuitively understand why does this problem exist in the first place. So that was literally the first thing that I did. The second thing that I did was to try and form a team. So the basic underlying thesis was that because we don't exactly know what the right solution is going to be, and because I did not have either publishing background or a startup background, so I thought that I want people where there is like a lot of trust between the people, and ideally people who have complementary skill set. But most importantly, people who would have high resourcefulness and high resiliency, so that even if it takes like time before we figure out what to build, these people will not kind of start giving up. So that is how I essentially started kind of trying to get my co-founders. So one of my co-founders, for example, was my school batchmate. One of my co-founders was my batchmate from engineering college. One was from my MBA college. One was my colleague from Vodafone. My first hire was my senior at Vodafone. Our first product manager was my batchmate. So a lot of people, these were people where there was already a lot of, a lot of shared history and a lot of trust between the people. And that's how we kind of built the initial team.
Okay, so let me ask you the same question you raised. First is, what is the problem statement you are solving? What is the exact problem statement you are solving, and why that problem statement exists in a society?
So the problem statement that we are solving is fairly simple. We want to build a storytelling platform where people can come and share their stories with each other, like irrespective of language, device, format, geography, or anything else. And I wouldn't say that other people haven't tried to solve it. So for example, YouTube does the same thing for video, or Facebook and Twitter allow you a platform to share your expressions. So does Blogspot or like WordPress. It's just that generally a lot of these are essentially focused towards, let's say, US based audience. So for example, a YouTube or a Blogspot or a WordPress. And we thought maybe we can build something which is a little bit more modern given the current technologies that are possible. Something which is a lot more suited to Indian audiences, something which is really, really easy to use, and something that kind of provides platform in multiple formats and not just like one video or one audio or one comics. Like, so different products which are kind of linked together in the form of like the shared stories that we'll have. So that was basically the understanding, and that's exactly the same understanding that we have right now.
Okay. Now let's talk about your team building experience. So when you hired first set of people, you mentioned that you recruited from your close circle, where you knew the people already, but after a while you'd have to go to go for recruiting people from outside. How do you go about recruitment? What kind of people you find when you go for hiring?
So in our case, we were very, very clear that we wanted to hire people who had good problem solving skills, who were resourceful, because as an early stage startup, you don't generally have as many resources or as much money. So people who can do a lot with a little bit, and people who are generally hungry and ambitious to do a lot more in their lives. So we like people who are bold and like who are fearless, who can take like bets and experiments even when they don't work out, because as an early stage startup, there are a lot of things that we did not know. So the premise was that skills people can learn over a period of time, experience people can gain on the job instead of like already having that experience, but they have to be resourceful, they have to be smart, and they have to be like, ambitious, where they would put in a lot of effort into learning and growing at the fastest pace possible. So I think from very, very early on, these are the 3, 4 major qualities that I've looked at in terms of people that we hire.
Okay. Um, uh, Typically, startups face two challenges primarily. One is hiring, which you already addressed. The other challenge is the funds. So, I would be very interested to know how have you managed the finances along the way? Did you raise funds externally, or are you bootstrap completely? I would like to hear on that.
So when we started building Pratilipi, at that time, like I just kept on borrowing money from my friends, like personal money, not in company's accounts, to kind of manage all the expenses and all of that. We did this for about 7, 8 months. After that, we raised a small round of 30 lakh rupees from Times Internet. They used to have an accelerator called T Labs. After that, about a year later, we raised $1 million seed round led by Nexus Venture Partners. After that, we have raised 3 more rounds. We raised a Series A of $4.3 million led by Omidyar. Then we raised a $15 million Series B led by Shimin and Shunway Capital. And then we raised 11 million Series C led by Tencent.
Okay. Having raised so many rounds of funding, I'd like to ask you, and this is one question every person who gets into an entrepreneurship asks: how do you raise funds? What is the ideal process of pitching investors and getting access to their funds?
Right. So I think generally it's a bad idea to think of fundraising as a goal. Generally, it's a good idea to think of your business as a goal. And then sometimes you need to fundraise, sometimes you don't. But that's just a kind of midway to kind of get to that goal. Once people actually internalize that, then it's basically about trying to understand the incentives of the person that you are going to be raising money from. And that's going to be very, very different for individuals versus corporate accelerators versus VCs versus private equity funds and so on and so forth. So for example, a typical, let's say, early stage VC is generally looking at a company that can grow to at least $100 million in revenue in next 8 to 10 years. So you have to be honest with yourself and figure out if the opportunity that you are addressing, if it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if it works, can it really grow to $100 million in revenue in next 8 to 10 years? If the answer is yes, then all you have to do is figure out like how do you convince somebody else that I can grow at this pace for the next 8, 10 years. If you can do that, then you will typically have a check size. But if you are raising money from, let's say, like founders or angel investors, generally they would be a lot more interested in seeing how you as a team have thought through the problem, whether you're really passionate and driven by this problem statement, and they wouldn't worry as much about like whether it's can be 100 million revenue or 50 million revenue. So I think it's largely about, or if you're raising from, let's say, late stage investors, then they will worry a lot more about, okay, is the business sustainable? Does it make sense on a unit economics basis? So I think understanding the incentives of different stage and different type of investors, and then kind of figuring out your story in a way that it aligns with their interest and their incentives is the right way to go about fundraise.
Okay. Ranjit, here is a unique question that I am asking you because you have built a homegrown technology platform. So if you look at the different technology platforms we use in our day-to-day life, most of the platforms have been built in San Francisco or US or China, but not in India. So why is that the case? Why Indian companies are not able to build global products so far? And is the story changing now?
Yeah, so I think it's just primarily a function of market maturity. So like early on, essentially, like if you don't have enough users, for example, then you wouldn't have enough people taking that risk, which means there wouldn't be enough venture support ecosystem in form of investors. That would mean there are not enough trained engineers who would want to work with you and all of that. Over a period of time, as the ecosystem matures, you have more and more people who want to try like bold, ambitious ideas, which means there's more like venture ecosystem, which means there are more people who are going through those courses and who want to work in these companies. So like as the ecosystem matures, this flywheel kind of starts rolling. So if you remember, for example, within China, about 10, 15 years back, like it used to be said that China only does one thing, which is take ideas from US and basically copy them, and that's it. Then people started saying that about 4 or 5 years back that see, China can actually build things that operate at scale, and they are very aggressive, they move very quickly, and so on and so forth. Last 2 3 years, there have been a lot of product categories where China has been actually moving ahead of US, and then US companies are trying to copy what China has been doing. I think the same is true largely for India as well. So like early on, it was all mostly global products. Then there were some products that like were inspired by these global products like Ola or, for example, Flipkart. But if you look at it today, we have companies like Postman, for example, which are kind of like creating entirely new categories. And I think like as ecosystem matures, we will see this happening more and more and more often.
Okay. So based on what you have planned to do so far, I'd like to understand what is the final product you are trying to build, or in other words, I'm trying to understand what is your vision with Pratilipi. What is the ultimate product?
Right. So the ultimate vision of Pratilipi essentially is what we started off with, that people should be able to share their stories with each other in any format, any device, any geography, and anything else. So right now we are still in just India. We only have 3 or 4 formats, and we only have 25 million monthly active users. So how do we take this from 25 million monthly active users to hopefully like 1 billion monthly active users across the world and not just me? And like across 50 formats instead of just having 4 different formats. And then how do we figure out which of these stories are the most powerful stories, utilizing both human curation and data or machine learning to find out which of these stories are like the highest potential stories, and then help them convert into like a wide variety of different formats. So everything from movies to games to physical books to theme parks to merchandise and everything else. Like imagine if Disney was being built today, how that should have looked. So if Pratilipi succeeds, that's what Pratilipi would be, like the future of Disney.
Very interesting. So we are almost at the end of the discussion. I have 2-3 questions left. First, I'd like to know what are the challenges you have faced so far while building and growing this venture?
So there always are a lot of challenges. So it's kind of hard to pick 1 or 2 or 3, but let me go with the ones that are most top of the mind. So I think first one is UGC platform. One of the most early challenges that you face is like, how do you solve that chicken egg problem? When you don't have readers, how do you bring writers? When you don't have writers, how do you bring readers? So I think that has been number 1 challenge. So number 2 challenge probably would be, how do you convince like the best people to come and work with you as team members, as advisors, as investors? So how do you convince these people to come and work with you on trying to achieve that vision? That's probably number 2. Number 3 would probably be just figuring out the right sort of technology infrastructure to be actually able to do this at scale. I think these would probably be the top 3 challenges off the top of my head.
Okay. Tell us what you have learned as an entrepreneur so far, which can shorten the learning curve of other founders who are just starting up.
Right, so there are multiple lessons learned along the journey. Few of the ones which are top of the mind are, number 1 probably is just having extreme focus is really, really important. So everybody will always have a bunch of advice for you on like what you can do and what other areas you can expand into. I think it's really, really important that till the time you have won your first use case clearly, it's important to kind of say no to a lot of different things. This is true for product as well as for business. So that's probably number 1. Number 2 probably would be that like it's a long-term game. It's definitely a marathon and not a sprint. So it makes sense to kind of be a nice person. It makes sense to kind of take care of your own health and your team's health and motivation levels. Because at the end of the day, like compounding really becomes very, very valuable once you start talking about a long-term journey. So like focus on like doing things the right way because it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So like don't burn out, for example, and things like that. So like I think these would be the top 2 learnings that I would probably talk about.
Okay. Let's play rapid fire round, small rapid fire, where you have to choose between 2 words, and you may or may not explain why you have chosen that. So it starts from ethics versus growth. Which one you have to choose? Micromanagement and freedom.
Freedom.
Single founder versus multiple founders.
Multiple founders.
Okay. Uh, Vision versus execution.
Execution.
Hire and fire versus slow progress. Sustainability versus profitability.
Sustainability.
Short-term goals versus long-term goals. Bootstrap versus external funding.
That is tricky. Depends on business to business. Probably, if I had to pick one, probably bootstrapped.
Okay. Quality versus quantity.
Quantity.
Reliability versus performance.
Performance.
Okay. I'm done with the rapid fire. Just one last question before we end. Tell us, how would you suggest our audiences to start their journey as entrepreneurs?
I think generally the best idea is to, instead of thinking of, starting a company, whatever, think of like essentially building cool things, or like trying to solve random problems. Like just in general in life, whatever you are doing as a student, as a professional, as a founder, businessman, doesn't matter. So once you're solving like a lot of different problems or building a lot of different things just for fun, just for learning, then a lot of times one of these things basically turns out to be something that you're deeply interested in, and where you actually have the skills to kind of, do something big. And then just go and pursue that with a single-minded focus. So for example, one of like ex-Prathivi teams, they participated in an internal hackathon in Prathivi, and like they won the prize in the hackathon. Then they essentially kind of dig deeper into that problem. And the same idea that they pitched at the hackathon is essentially now a company that is doing like, I think, about 100 crores in GMV every month in like less than a year. So I think that is probably the best way of thinking about building a business, instead of like starting with, okay, I want to be a founder or entrepreneur or whatever.
Okay. On that note, I'd close this session. It was a great pleasure to host you here at ALI. And I'd like to thank you, Ranjit, for your time. Best wishes for Pratilipi.
Thank you for having me here. Bye-bye.
Listeners, you can follow and connect with Ranjit by typing Ranjit Pratap Singh on LinkedIn. That is it for today's episode. We'll be back with another exciting entrepreneur. Stay tuned to ALI.